Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful. I'd like to welcome you, dear viewers, to another in our series, In the Light of Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah's peace and blessings be on each and every one of you. We welcome you to our program dedicated to you, dear viewers. I'm waiting for your letters at our post box, P.O. Box 111, Sharjah, UAE. Please write in. Let us hear from you. Not getting too many letters these days, although we're getting a lot of emails. I guess emails become easier. It's cheaper. But still, we'd like to hear from you. Some of you through the mail. Those of you far away, for example. Put, of course, in the light of Islam, put my name on the top of the letter. Otherwise, let's hear from you through the email, as you have been sending to me at my website, bilalphillips.com. Go to the guest book, leave a note for Sharjah TV, or at my email address, fld3@hotmail.com. Let's go on with a letter from Miss Qureshi, which a couple of programs back we started. She had a number of questions remaining. I guess it's herself and her family. A question, hair dye. Is it permissible for people to color their hair, both young and old? And what have you got to say about using black hair dye? Not to color gray, but for fashion. We've heard that black dye is not allowed in any case. Well, hair dye, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had recommended that the hair be dyed when it becomes gray. This was the recommendation of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. He said, dye your hair. So this is the circumstance, covering the gray, giving a youthful look to the Muslim Ummah. But this practice now of changing one's hair color, this week I'm blonde, next week I'm a redhead, the week after I'm a brunette, the week after that I've got black hair, this is a Western concept, a Western practice where people are radically changing their looks. You change your hair color to match your dress. This is Western. It has nothing to do with the norms of a healthy society. This is a fashion-conscious, addicted to the fashion way of life. Islam does not encourage this. I cannot say haram. I cannot say haram because in itself, the act of dyeing your hair, it's something not preferable, but we cannot say forbidden. But where, we're doing it imitating the non-Muslims, then it becomes, or it falls under the head category in which the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man tashabbaha biqawmin fahuwa minhum." Whoever imitates the way of a people is of them. So we have to beware that we don't become so influenced by Western culture that our whole values have changed. We're trying to be this and trying to be that and trying to look like this and trying to look like that. And colored contact lenses falls in the same category. Though primarily we cannot say haram, but they're discouraged. Why do you want to have blue eyes? Well, because blue eyes has been promoted in the media as, a standard of beauty. Blonde hair, blue eyes. This is sort of like a universal standard which has come from the West. A minority of human beings on the earth have this description. But so many people are artificially dyeing their hair blonde and getting blue contact lenses so they can fit into that picture. It's not good. This is something harmful. People are spending and wasting money, trying to follow these fashions. So we should not allow our children to do this. Stop them from it. It's a part of an addiction to a culture which is not Islamic at all. As to the use of black dye, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did say, do not dye your hair with black. He said that in relation to a particular individual who had died, and they were preparing him for burial. He told them his hair was white. He said, dies here, but not with black. So on that basis, we accept the instruction of the Prophet ﷺ, and we don't dye our hair using black. The next question from Ms. Qureshi, drawing, painting human beings, animals, flowers, and plants, is it allowed? Well, the drawing and painting of human beings and animals is not allowed. Birds, not allowed. Fishes, not allowed. Plants, trees, mountains, the clouds, the sun, the moon, buildings, cars, the water, all of that is allowed. Ships at sea, all of that is allowed. But the painting or drawing of animals and human beings are forbidden, not just by Islam. It's not Islam just in the final form which introduced this. This has been prohibited thousands and thousands of years ago by the prophets of God. It's still recorded in the Torah or the Torah of Moses. It's mentioned there. You should not make any graven image, an image painted, carved, drawn, etc., of any living being outside of the animal, the trees, etc. Any living being that is in the air, in the sky, in the water, or on the land. Forbidden. Why? Because this is the door to idolatry. When we look at all the idols that people are worshiping, what are the idols of? They're idols of animals or human beings. That's the most common idols that people worship. Not to say that maybe people somewhere, sometime, don't worship something else, but for the most part, the vast majority of people worship idols in the form of human beings or animals. So this door was closed. And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ mentioned that from the time of Adam, when Adam was created, and he was not only the first man, but he was also the first prophet, he was given revelation. The religion he had was Islam, and he taught his offspring Islam, and they continued to practice it all the way down to the time of Prophet Noah. In his time, there were 5 righteous people who, when they died, Satan came to the masses of people and suggested to them that they make images of these righteous people, paintings, carvings, drawings of them, and they place them in the places where they used to sit, where they used to frequent, at their graves, so that when people would go to the graveyard or wherever they used to sit, etc., and they would see these images, it would remind them of these righteous people, and they would be encouraged to do good deeds. The people liked the idea, it sounded good, so they did it. And that first generation went, and that's what they did. Whenever they saw the picture of such a white person, a good person, righteous person, they would continue to do good, and it would encourage them to do good. However, generations later, Satan came back to the people, who by now had forgotten what the original intention of those who first made these idols were, or these images were, and he came to them and suggested to them, the later generation, that really your ancestors, your grandparents, etc., they were worshiping these images. And it was due to their sincere worship of the images that rain came in abundance, the fields yielded great yields, and the people began to worship them. This is how idolatry crept in to the world. And Prophet Noah was sent to call people back to the worship of the one true God without any images and representations of that God. So because of that, Islam has prohibited the use of images in whatever form. However, there's an exception made for children. young children are allowed to have images. They learn better by it. Dolls, pictures, these kind of things are permitted for children. Once they grow up, then we no longer keep these things. We remove them from our homes. So you don't want to be a 25-year-old woman and you still have the dolls that you had when you were a kid. No, get rid of them. Don't save them for sentimental value. No, they now become idols. Get rid of them. As a baby, as a child, you played with them. Now your time is over. You no longer play with them. Get rid of them. So that's the general ruling concerning them. The next question, what do you have to say in the light of the Sunnah and the Quran about working women, especially those who don't need to work? Well, in general, we would say that the general or the norm for the Muslim society is that the man works. He goes out, he earns a living, and he provides for the woman. The woman stays home, she looks after the home, she looks after the children. That's the normal setup of the family structure and the workplace. That's the norm. Now, if a woman goes out to work along with her husband, then the children are now put in a creche or a nursery or whatever. Other people will be raising that child. That woman, when she goes out to work, she's making more money, makes life a little more comfortable for them. But what is happening to that child? That child is being denied in those early years the intimate comfort and love of the mother. Because no matter how well-trained the people of the nursery may be, you know, they've been Western trained or whatever, they've had all this kind of training, the fact is they're not mothers. They're not the mother of those children. And they will not treat the children the same as their own mother. And they're human beings. How many cases we hear of where child care workers, people in nurseries, etc., have abused children? A woman is put with 10 kids, babies. At first, maybe she has a big heart. She goes in, she's taking care of them. She changes these diapers and, you know, she's doing this, looking out, feeding this one and so on, so taking care of everybody. But after a while, she gets worn down. This one is screaming and that one's screaming. She's starting to say, why does it stop screaming? Why does this one say? Next thing you know, she's taking the pillow, put it over the head of the kid, and the kid dies. Or she takes up another kid, starts shaking the kid, stop screaming, until the kid, you know, the flopping of the head back and forth causes them to have brain seizures and they die. How many cases? Many, many cases of this happening. So, mothers, your first responsibility is to your children. You should stay home and look after those children. Now, if there's something you can do from home, because maybe there's some jobs that can be done from home, then, and you have the spare time, then no harm, as long as the family doesn't suffer. And if you have no need to go out to work, now what motivates you to go out and work? The woman says, well, I don't feel fulfilled. This is the Western concept, that a woman is not fulfilled, she is not, you know, fulfilling her potential unless she's out in the workplace. She's out there being a secretary, you know, driving a cab, you know, whatever, a bus conductor. She, you know, this makes her feel worthwhile. But staying in the home, this is like, you know, backwards. Hey, staying in the home is far more important. It's a much bigger job. And it's the primary job. I should also add here that when women go out in the workforce and they start to compete with men for the same jobs, what happens to those men who lose out? Now you have a man who has no job, who is unable to take care of his family. This is why the Islamic society would discourage women from going out. Let the men do the work. And if there is a shortage, that's another situation, where there's a need in the society, then people may come out and fulfill that need. But don't put men out of work. Don't make men unemployed who need to work to look after a family. No, Islam doesn't encourage this. However, there are certain jobs that women are encouraged to take, to learn. The jobs which relate to education, teaching, for teaching girls in school, teaching young girls, young women, the teaching profession. This is a profession very important. So we have female teachers to teach our women and the girls. We also have certain professions which are also vital professions, like medicine. We should have female gynecologists. We should have female dentists, and other professions which women need to deal with. We should have female bankers, of course in Islamic banks, where the females can deal with females when they have to deal in the bank. Wherever we can provide female people working, for example, in stores where they're selling lingerie, selling women's private clothes. You don't want a woman going to a store, your wife or daughter, whatever, she's going to a store, and a man is going to be there, holding up panties and brassieres and things like this for your daughter to look at. And no, it's not good. No, it should be, if anybody's going to show it to your wife or your daughter, it should be a female. So shop assistants who are females who are doing these things. So where we have these kind of circumstances, where there's a need here, then people may take these kind of jobs. Otherwise, for a woman just to go out and work for the sake of working, no. Better she stays home, she learns her religion, goes and takes some classes and improves her knowledge, prepare her to be the best mother she can for your children. Because that's what's most important. For her to give the children as much as she can from knowledge of the religion, from proper upbringing, learn about raising children, rather than learn about it after you made your mistakes. You look back and say, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Maybe with the next one I won't. No, better when we go into raising children, we study it, find out, learn. There's a lot of information available to us today. We don't have to learn, as we go. Learn from our mistakes. We don't have to. People have already written books and identified where common mistakes are, etc., and advised us as to how to raise children properly. So women should take advantage of that. They can help educate their husbands, with regards to certain issues and practices, which are also very important. She has the last question, really, Ms. Qureshi's last question is, as for careers for women, how does a career in the field of human resources stand? Well, it depends on what that career has to do. If she has to be interviewing men all the time, men are coming in for this job and the other job, and she has to interview them and be constantly dealing with men, we say no. This is not a good field. If she's interviewing women for women's positions, then it's okay, fine, good, well. So the circumstance of her job will determine whether the job, in other words, the job description will determine whether that job is acceptable for a Muslim woman or it's not. With that, dear viewers, I'd like to thank you for being with us in this segment of our program. And we hope to hear from you through your letters or emails or whatever, calls, etc. We'd like to hear from you, and so that we can share your questions with the viewers and also to answer the questions for you yourselves. With that, I bid you farewell. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful. I'd like to welcome you, dear viewers, to another in our series, In the Light of Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah's peace and blessings be on each and every one of you. Our program, In the Light of Islam, is dedicated to you, dear viewers. It's to answer your questions about Islam. We hope that you would write into us, call us, fax us, email us, and let us know what questions you have to answer, you'd like to get answers for. And it can be on any topic concerning Islam or related to Islam. We'll be only too glad to answer them for you, because, as I said, this program is dedicated to you. You may write in to me, Dr. Bilal Phillips, at P.O. Box 111, Sharjah, UAE. Oh, you can stick on there, of course, Sharjah Television. Dr. Bilal Phillips, Sharjah Television, P.O. Box 111, Sharjah, UAE, if you're outside of the country. And of course, within the country, it's enough to put just Sharjah. You don't need to put UAE. Or you may email me through my website by writing in my guest book, bilalphillips.com. Go to the website, go to the guest book, and leave a question there. It will be passed on to me. Or at my own email address, fld3@hotmail.com. You may also email me there. Or you may fax in your question to my office fax in Sharjah, 06, or if you're faxing from outside the country, 9716, then 5323724. And of course, you may call me or call in questions to me on my office phone in Sharjah, 06 5339 864, or in Dubai, you may call 04, and if you call from outside the country, it will be 9714, then 3350-546. Now, we're going to look at some emails which were sent in. The first one is from Miss Qureshi. She writes saying, we've been watching your programs for some time now and we find it quite useful. We'd like you to answer a few questions for us. The first one, after death, does one go straight to heaven or hell? Well, no. When a person dies, they enter the state of the barzakh, or the state of the grave. There, the soul goes through a journey. This has been outlined in different books. There's a book called The Journey of the Soul, in English, available by Dr. Suhaib Hassan. And you can also find it described in great detail in another book called The Mysteries of the Soul by Abu Bilal al-Kennedy, where the soul when the soul is passed over by the angel of death to the angels of the next life, it's taken up to the heavens. The soul which is good will be allowed entry in, and it will be praised. The soul which is evil, it will be cast back down to reunite with the body or the body parts. And then angels will come to that individual in that state of the grave and question them. Two angels will come, one by the name of Munkar and the other one called Nakir. And they ask the question, who is your Lord? What was your religion? And who is the person who was sent to you, the messenger? Then one's deeds will be shown in the form of either a beautiful smelling, beautiful looking individual, or a hideous, nasty smelling, stinky individual. These will be personified and shown to us, and we'll question, what is this? Who is this? And, I should also mention that for the soul that was let into this heaven praised, it will afterwards return back to the body or the body parts, right? To maintain its connection with the elements that was its body. And I say elements that was its body as opposed to just saying to the body, because we know there are people who are burnt. Hindus burn their bodies. There are people who allow the vultures to eat the body. For example, like the Zoroastrians, they put the dead up on these like beds, high beds, and they allow the birds to come and the vultures to come and devour the person. Then you also have people who die at sea and their bodies cast into the sea, so some sharks come and eat it up or whatever, you know, and a variety of different ways that people may die, so where their body parts may be scattered. So we know that there is a connection that remains with the body. It is maybe the body as a whole, if it is in one spot, or the body parts wherever they go. The soul remains in contact. How? We don't go into that. This is what we know. So that what happens after that, you know, there's a number of different incidents. The person who is unable to answer these questions in the grave, and of course, it's not a matter that we can say, well, okay, I heard in this world what the answer was, so as long as I remember it, I memorize it, I know what the answer is, I can say it then. No. The person who was not a true believer, who was a hypocrite, who only pretended to be a Muslim or called himself a Muslim or herself a Muslim, and they really weren't Muslims, they will not be able to answer. Even though in their minds they may know when they're asked, who is your Lord? They know it's Allah, but they can't say it. Allah will cause them to only be able to say, ah, ah. They'll be stuck. It won't come out of their mouths. So they will experience this. This is part of the degradation the people who have rejected belief in this life will go through in that state of the grave prior to the resurrection. Now, once we step out of the time zone, we're no longer among the living, we're in the spirit world, the world of the barzakh. Of course, time does not affect us as it affects us in this life. So those people who died 10,000 years ago or 1,000,000 years ago, they are going through that same process like in the time frame the same as everybody else. So we're all resurrected together. It's not that some people are going to sit around in the grave for, or in the state of the grave for, you know, thousands and thousands of years. No, everybody goes through the same process. They're resurrected at the same time and they're judged at the same time. But it is just not immediate. You don't go immediately to paradise or to hell. There are some other points which the person goes through, you know, after it's clarified and the person's becomes clear that the person is in fact a disbeliever, you know, great sinner, etc. Then the Prophet ﷺ said that a door from, or a window from hell will open up, and the hot wind coming from the hell will pass over that person, you know, continually until they're resurrected. And the one who was good, etc., then a window from paradise opens, and fragrant, pleasant air from paradise will pass over that person until the time of resurrection. The second question from Ms. Qureshi, visiting shrines. A friend of ours made it a point to visit a shrine before his exams for good results. We told him not to do this because it is shirk. But his argument was that he visited the same shrine a year before, after which he had obtained a very good result. This friend of ours is a Sunni Muslim, that is an Orthodox Muslim, and is a moderate practitioner otherwise. Some people who call themselves Muslims are engaged in such practices. Should we as believers consider them fellow believers or not? Well, 2 points in the question. One, the response for the person who says, well, when I went to the shrine, I got good results in my exams. So that tells me I should keep going. If I've got exams coming up, it's best for me to go to the shrine again. Well, this is the argument of the disbelievers in general. When a person speaks to a Christian, you know, Jesus is not God, for you to worship Jesus, to call on him in prayer, this is shirk. This is the greatest sin that you could possibly commit. You're worshiping other than God. They say, but when we pray to Jesus, our prayers are answered. What do you say? Similarly, one goes to a Hindu and explains to the Hindu, this is a statue. This is something somebody made with their own hands. You shouldn't worship this. They say, well, when we worship this, our God, Ganesh or whoever, we get good things in our lives. Our lives are happy. We had success. In fact, we didn't used to worship, our idols very much. We weren't really into it. But when we had this really big problem and we decided, okay, we may as well give it a try, and we prayed to Ganesh, our situation was alleviated. Our lives changed. Everything is fine now. And similarly, if we go to a person who worships nature, he worships the trees, the water, the air, the sun, the moon, these things. And we tell him, this is not God. God is not in the water. He's not in the trees, in the air. He's not the planets. That individual can say the same thing. Well, when we have problems in the tribe, and we go and we pray to the gods of the water, we don't get that much fish, for example. Our fish, the fish that we're catching, our catch is very small. Then we go and we make some sacrifices to our god of the sea or the god of the river, and we are sincere in our prayers, our catch increases. We catch more fish. Okay, what do we do? What do we say? Now, the same thing that you would say to that person who worships the gods of the river or the sea is the same thing you say to the person who worships an idol or worships another human being or who goes and worships at the shrines where it's also worshiping other human beings. It's the same thing. It is God who has answered your prayers. Not that person, the saint in the shrine, or Jesus, or the idol Ganesh, or the gods of the rivers and the seas. It is God. There are people who don't worship God at all. Because we have to ask these same people, okay, all of these say, well, it's our God who answered. We say to them, what about the person who doesn't believe in any God at all, but he wants something to happen, and he wants it really bad, and he sets his intention, I want this thing, I need this thing, I'm gonna get this thing, and he motivates himself to get this thing, and he gets it. And he didn't worship any God at all. So what do you, worshiper of the God of the rivers, say? You'll tell him, no, it was the God of the river who gave you it. Or the one worshiping Ganesh will say, well, it was Ganesh who gave it to him. And the one worshiping Jesus says it was Jesus who gave it to him. And the one worshiping the saint in the shrine says it's the saint who gave it to him. But we say it is God. It is God who gave it to him. God in all these cases. The point is, God gives to everyone. Whether you believe in him or not, he gives. If you believe in him in the rivers and the seas, or in statues, or in human beings, God still gives. Otherwise, this life would not be a test. Because somebody would ask, why? Isn't that just confusing people? If God is going to give to the non-believer, then isn't that encouraging people not to believe in God? Or if God's going to give to the one who worships the gods of the rivers and the seas, isn't that encouraging them to worship these things? Does God want people to be misguided? No. God doesn't want people to be misguided. He wants people to be guided. And he put signs in their lives, and he sent messengers, and he sent books of revelation, all of this to help us, while putting within ourselves a consciousness of right and wrong. All of that is there. But this life is a test. Will we act on the knowledge, the primeval knowledge which we have inside of our souls, knowing God? Or the understanding, the soul understanding of righteousness and corruption? Or the messengers which came from the prophets and the books of revelation that have come to us? Will we believe in them and act in accordance with them, or will we not? This is the test of this life. Were it known that if you made all this motivation and set yourself up, nothing happens. You worship the gods of the rivers and the seas, no fish comes. You worship Ganesh, your business still fails. You worship Jesus, you still have calamities in your life. You worship the saint, your exams, you fail. But when you only worship Allah, you will pass your exams, calamities are removed, business successful, your catch is well, whatever you try to do, you succeed. If this became known, who would remain a disbeliever? Not a single person in the world would remain a non-Muslim worshiping Islam or worshiping God in Islam as he's supposed to worship. Not a single person. So this is a part of the test of this life. For the believers themselves. Because they raise their hands like everybody else, and they see their people are getting their prayers answered. So are they. What's the difference between us and them? Some of our prayers are answered, some of them are not. Well, the believers should know, as the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ told them, Ud'u Allah wa antum muqinuna bil ijaba. Call on Allah, being certain that all your prayers will be answered. All the prayers are answered. But you have to be sincere in your prayer. If you're sincere, then all prayers are answered. However, how does the answer come? Does it mean every time you put your hand up, you get whatever you ask for? When Allah said, وَيَدْعُ الْإِنسَانُ بِالشَّرِّ دُعَاهُ بِالْخَيْرِ, that a human being will ask for evil in their prayers for good. Meaning, they're asking for something they think is good, but in fact there is evil in it for them. They don't realize it. As Allah said elsewhere in the Quran, عَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُ شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. Perhaps you may dislike something which is good for you. وَعَسَىٰ أَن تُحِبُّ شَيْئًا وَهُوَ شَرٌ لَكُمْ. And perhaps you may love something which is evil for you. وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. And Allah knows and you don't know. That's the bottom line. So what happens is that when a person who is a true believer sincerely worships God, then Allah gives what is good for them. What is not, He will repel an equivalent amount of evil that would have come to them, or He will save it for them as good deeds, added to their scale of good deeds on the Day of Judgment. So this is how we answer the individual who goes to the shrine. It is God, not the saint in the shrine. The second question, should we consider them to be Muslims, those going to shrines? Yes, they are Muslims. They are Muslims who are ignorant, they're misguided, they're in the wrong, but we don't declare them to be non-Muslims, disbelievers. This is not our job, this is not our responsibility. Now, technically speaking, if the evidence is brought to them clearly of the error of their ways and they still insist, then in fact they would be classified as disbelievers. But there are a lot of conditions that involve bringing that evidence. It's not just you and I in the street, people off the street can say, okay, I brought the evidence, I showed them. If they're saying, well, they're listening to their sheikhs and whatever the sheikhs told them this is okay, and you come off the street, you have a little bit of knowledge, you're not able to convince them, then we cannot say the evidence has been brought to them. So it has to be brought by those people in knowledge, those people of, scholars who can bring all of the evidence to them and present a very clear picture. After that, if they refuse, then they fall into disbelief. With that, dear viewers, I'd like to thank you for being with us in this segment of our program. And Ms. Qureshi will continue to answer your questions in the coming program. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful. I'd like to welcome you, dear viewers, to another in our series, In the Light of Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This program from Sharjah Television is dedicated for you, dear viewers, answering your questions concerning Islam. In this segment of our program, we're continuing to look at some of the many questions which were sent in by students at the Oxford School in Dubai. The next question which they sent in is it haram for a guy to go out with a girl and vice versa? Actually, we looked at that earlier when we talked about issues of girlfriend and boyfriends. So this is where the basis of it being haram lies. The whole issue of that relationship. A boy and girl going out, well, if they're brother and sister, no problem. If they're brother and sister, right? If they're uncle and niece, or aunt and nephew, you know. These circumstances where marriage is impossible, there's no possibility of any relationships developing of that type, then it's permissible. But even so, one still has to take a certain amount of precaution, because young people are still young people. And if they're particularly influenced by, the Western influences which are coming at us through the movies, the television, the magazines, the novels, and all those kind of things, where you can't find any kind of movie, for example, today, which doesn't have some kind of love scenes. And these love scenes are love scenes of fornication, adultery. Basically that's what is being promoted in these movies. I mean, no matter what movie you find today, it could be an action movie. They talk about action movies where, there's either it's military, combat, people are fighting in war, or it's some, gangsters and chasing gangsters, whatever kind of movie, action movie, a lot of shooting, killing, all this kind of thing. I mean, that's bad enough. But in spite of all of that, you must have love scenes. It's got to be somehow the hero is going to fall in love with this one, or she falls in love with him, or something like this. It's there. And they're not married. And you're not talking about marriage. And it's, the corruption is throughout. You can even find in the cartoons, like the movie which was made, the animated movie Ants. It became very, very popular, about some ants in a colony, and I don't remember the details of it. Someone has to leave and go looking for something or the other, whatever. But this young guy, he wanted to marry the princess, but he was from the lower levels or whatever. But there's a love scene. It's a love story. Ants was a love story, and they end up kissing. Two ants kissing. This is the little kids are watching this. What is being promoted here? I mean, there was adventure and so on, so going on in the movie, but there is this undercurrent message of sexual relations, of male-female relations, love, falling in love, and we're not talking about marriage here. We're talking about just falling in love and kissing each other and holding each other and all these kind of things, which is, of course, haram in Islam, clearly haram. But for the West, it's innocent. Nothing wrong. The little boy kissed the little girl in school, and no, there is plenty wrong. This is the beginning of fornication. And this is why fornication is so rampant. And of course, now people, of course, from the Western perspective, I mean, they look at it as being innocent. Why? Because, they have been involved in sexual activity from the time they're in their early teens, some of them even before their teens are involved in it. They've done surveys, for example, now in America, where they're finding kids in primary school, 9 years old, 10 years old, are involved in sexual activity. So a society which has accepted that, that's become a norm, it's not surprising that you're going to find it in everything that they produce, virtually. I mean, maybe there's some exceptions with National Geographic or something like this. And even there, you still have to be careful. Because sometimes they may throw in something of that in there, on you. But in general, that's what's coming at young people. And if this is the environment which is open to them, and we're not monitoring what they're reading, what they're seeing, what they're doing, then they have been exposed to this. They're growing up with it, and they have these feelings. So a boy and a girl going out, what are they going out for? That is the first steps for haram. So in Islam, we'll say it's haram. Don't go out. Next question, is love marriage allowed in Islam? If not, then how much interaction is allowed before they get married? The question, is love marriage allowed in Islam? What does that mean? They're asking, can you marry the person you love or who you're falling in love with? Of course. Islam doesn't say that you cannot marry somebody who you're fallen in love with. It doesn't prohibit that. Meaning that you saw somebody for, whatever, Allah's will, not that you, were in some haram situation, but you saw somebody caught your eye, whatever, who you felt attracted to. You felt some feeling for, and you sought to marry that person by honorable means, by going to the parents and talking to them and expressing your desire for marriage, etc., etc. And that's perfectly legitimate. And if that the other partner, the other person, saw you and they are also attracted and so and so, and that you're both attracted to each other and you marry on that basis, this is perfectly legitimate. Islam does not oppose, quote unquote, love marriage, meaning that you're supposed to marry without any love being there. There should not be any feelings of love. But again, when we say feelings of love, what do we mean here? I think in reality what we're talking about is attraction, that people are attracted. Because, what is love? How do you define love? Is love something which, you see somebody, you say, saw the person, fell in love with them right away. Is that love, really? Or is love something which develops in time with relationships, people struggling together, working out their differences, going through all the negatives and the positives together, and out of that comes a bond between the two people, which we now can legitimately call love. The other thing is just attraction, infatuation, People have movie idols, they fall in love with them. Sports idols, they fall in love with them. Is it really love? So what we're talking about when we're saying about a love relationship, obviously we're not talking about that bond which comes really from living together. We're talking about attraction. Can people marry those who they're attracted to? Of course. Prophet Muhammad said, go and see the one that you want to marry, because it's better for you to put something good in your heart towards the person. It's better. You should marry the person you're attracted to. If your father brings you somebody and says, listen, this person we want you to marry, this person, your cousin or whoever, this person is a friend of ours and so on. You see this person, you're not attracted. Or similarly, the boys are told, listen, this is one of your relatives, your aunt, she wants you to marry her daughter and so on, or there's somebody who's a friend of ours, and you see her and you're not attracted. Does Islam say you should go ahead and marry because your parents want you to marry? No, Islam does not say that at all. If you don't feel any attraction for the person, you shouldn't marry them. No matter, of course, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had said that people are married for four things: their beauty, their wealth, their family status, and for piety, righteousness, being good Muslims, being religious. He said marry for that reason. Make that the primary reason. However, he didn't say nullify everything else, meaning if somebody comes who's pious, God-fearing, just marry them, even though you're not attracted. No, Islam is not saying that at all. No, if you're not attracted, don't marry the person, because this is somebody you're going to be living with for the rest of your life. And if you don't feel any attraction, you don't feel any feelings towards them, then to put yourself into that situation is to put yourself in a situation which will become very uncomfortable in time. So, the idea of marrying where there is attraction, no, Islam supports it. How much time does a person have to interact? Well, there's no time limit set. You know, if an intention for marriage has been given, you and the prospective groom or bride meet, and you talk in the presence of the fathers, the mothers, you know, somebody else. You're not alone. You talk, you see each other, you may speak, you may communicate, and if you feel a need to meet a second time, in the presence, not on your own, not that the parents agreed, okay, everything's okay, now you can go out together. No. No. Because the fact that there's an agreement for marriage, that doesn't mean now that you can go out together, be alone together, you know, all the things which you spoke about as being haram as boyfriend and girlfriend, now it is okay because marriage has been proposed and accepted. Parents have accepted the idea and they say, okay, a year from now you can get married, so now you can be boyfriend and girlfriend. No, there's none of that in Islam. When a proposal is accepted, then the steps for marriage should begin. If they don't begin, if it's being delayed, then you remain separate as you were before until such time as the steps begin to be taken for the actual marriage. Nothing becomes halal for you simply because your parents have accepted. Beyond, of course, meeting each other in the presence of one of the parents. That's still permissible. The next question: why are mixed dinners haram even among grown-ups? Well, mixed dinners meaning a man, his wife, another man, his wife, other men and their wives, we sit around at the table and we eat together. It could be me and my brothers and our wives. So there's a relationship between the men. Or it could be sisters and their husbands. So there's a relationship between the women. But it is still a mixed gathering. We sit around at the table. Now, when we sit at the table, what is happening? We're going to converse. We're going to talk. Is it just me and my wife, and me and my brothers we're going to talk? No, I'm going to talk with my brother's wife and my friend's wife and the other's wife, and we're talking, we're friendly, and so on. So we're developing relationships. And when we're talking, we're looking at each other. So we're involved now in putting ourselves in a situation of haram. Because, of course, you talk and you're trying to be friendly and you're looking and something can come in your heart from these contacts, etc. Adultery. This is the foundation for adultery. This will promote adultery. Of course, again, you know, when one is bombarded or one is raised in a Western environment, one will say, what? This is innocent. You know, people do this all the time. You know, in fact, in the West, it's quite common. You and your wife, you go over to visit the neighbor. You know, when you meet them at the door, you go kiss the neighbor's wife, and the neighbor kisses your wife. That's norm in many societies. I'm not saying maybe everywhere in America, but, you know, this was the norm. In Canada, where I grew up, this is what people did. You went to, you know, they greeted each other this way. But what is that? This is the basis for adultery. Though the intention may not be there at all, people are very innocent, but just you know, this is just a friendly gesture. How many friendly gestures were misinterpreted? Or people making a friendly gesture set something going. It's only friendly. We're only shaking hands. We're only kissing cheeks. But in doing that, somebody does it and they get a feeling. Something happens. They feel something, you know, and something starts. That's all it takes. So this in Islam is forbidden. So it is not allowed to sit around in a gathering where the men and the women are looking and chatting and talking. This is the formula for adultery and fornication. That is the formula for it. Now, where, you may have, for example, a lesson being given, somebody's invited to come in and give a talk, and he gives the talk among the men, and the women may be together and listening in another room or in the back or whatever. They're sitting together, and they can listen in, and they can ask questions. So, yes, they're hearing each other, etc., but it's not a relationship. There are not relationships being developed there. This is a situation of lecturing or educational circumstances. The question, why can't a boy and girl be alone in a room? Well, of course, we looked at that before. We said, this is why we said boyfriend and girlfriend relationships are not allowed. Even where your friend, they're not even boyfriend and girlfriend, but your son wants to go help your neighbor's daughter who is studying in the same level. She needs some help in her homework, so they go to her room and the door is closed. Forbidden. We said the only circumstance where this would be permissible if your son goes over and the father or the mother is there sitting right between them, and he explains how this is done or something like this. It's just, helping. And that's if the parents can't do it themselves, right? So a circumstance like this, yeah, permissible. But to go and be alone in the room, we said, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, the third is Satan. And that's why. Satan whispers into the ear of one whilst they're just doing their homework, isn't he cute? Or isn't she cute? I like the way she looks, this and that. Satan whispers into their ears thoughts, ideas into their hearts, and relationships develop, and they end up in some kind of fornication. So this is why Islam forbids male and females to be alone together. And this includes us as adults. To have a secretary, for example, many of us in our jobs, we are maybe managers or whatever, we have a secretary. Secretary comes in to take notes, the door is closed, you and the secretary. You're dictating notes. Now, you might think, okay, it's innocent, I don't have any intentions. The secretary comes, I'm just dictating the notes. And maybe for the first week, the first month, first 6 months, the first year, nothing happens. But all it takes is once. You're in a weak position, you had some fight at home, you feel bad about your wife, why is she like this? And you come in and you're dictating to your secretary, and all of a sudden, thoughts are coming into your head. She looks nice. Satan is putting thoughts into your head, feeding you now, because you're in a vulnerable situation now. So somebody who you weren't even considering before, now you start to consider. And you being alone with her, that's the formula for disaster. So Islam forbids it. It doesn't say when you have that feeling, that's the time you have to stop. No, because who knows when it happens. It could happen the very first time she came in your room. Similarly, as a secretary, you should know. Women who work as a secretary, you need to work with a female boss. That's the best thing for you. Do not work with a male boss. Or, at the least, if you have to take notes from a male, that the door is open, you're not alone, where people can't see you, it is an open situation, which was going to discourage any kind of, relationship from developing. And the best way, really the most proper way, is that you work for a female boss, that you don't work for a male boss. That's the best thing. And for men, better that you have a male secretary. That's the best thing. That protects you, protects your religion, your honor, your position before God. The last question of these questions about intermingling and these kind of things is, why aren't girls allowed to go out as frequently as boys? And these are students' questions we said from the Oxford School in Dubai. Why aren't girls allowed to go out as frequently as boys? Well, Parents, this is a general double standard that parents will have. They're much more careful about the girls than the boys. Of course, this is a mistake because the problem can arise for both. But because if a girl makes a mistake, she gets pregnant, that something will, what do you do after that? Whereas if the boy makes a mistake, he can always come back and it doesn't show. It hasn't affected him in that sense. So people tend to be much more lax with the boys and careful about the girls. But really, care needs to be taken about both, because the world out there today, unfortunately, is a very corrupt world. And so many of our children are being corrupted and growing up in corrupt states. And this is the same thing when it comes to setting up, for example, Islamic schools. You'll find in communities where Muslims are minorities, they will focus on girls' schools. We need to get a school for the girls, you know, make sure the girls are protected and so on. So we don't want to wear the hijab and all these different kind of things. So we have these girls going through schools and learning the proper thing, proper etiquette in Islam and everything, and they graduate, you know, good Muslim girls. And then who are they going to marry? These boys who have been going to the state schools, who had girlfriends and be, you know, having all these relationships, going to discos and parties and all these kind of things. So now you're saying, okay, now you got to get married. And who is there for her to marry? But a corrupt individual who is, you know, as we say, corrupt to the bone. This is a mistake. If you want, because that marriage is the marriage of disaster. Either he's going to corrupt her, or he's going to beat her, or he's going to abuse her, or whatever. This is the end consequence. But so we should not, and try our best to avoid double standards. What is dangerous for the girls is dangerous for the boys. With that, dear viewers, I'd like to thank you for being with us in this segment of our program, In the Light of Islam. You may write into me through email by contacting me on my website, bilalphillips.com. That's BILALPHILIPS.com. Go to the guest book, leave a message, mention that you'd like it answered on Sharjah Television, for example. Or you may fax to me in Sharjah, 9716 if you're calling us from outside the country, and 06 if you're calling from inside the country, 5323724. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful, I'd like to welcome you, dear viewers, to another in our series, In the Light of Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah's peace and blessings be on each and every one of you. In this session, we continue to look at questions which have come in from a variety of different sources, some of them by way of email, some of them have been sent in from schools, and we have, I'll begin with a set of questions which were given to me by students at the Oxford School here in Dubai. These questions, a variety of issues that are relevant or pertinent to young people. The first question, which comes under the general heading of intermingling of sexes, they asked, is it haram to have girlfriends or boyfriends? I mean, this is what they're usually confronted with. The common practice in Western schools, from children are quite young all the way down to the primary levels, the children are encouraged to develop male-female relationships. So, girls will have boyfriends, boys will have girlfriends. And, of course, this is the natural consequence also of the girls and boys studying together. Whereas, in an Islamic school, the Islamic approach, there should be a separation of the sexes. Males are separated from females. So this kind of activity would be lessened. But of course, no matter how much a person tries to make these separations, young people influenced by the dominant world culture, Western culture, will still fall into some of these practices or traps. And the question arises, should, or is it haram actually, or is it just something disliked? Is it haram for boys to have girlfriends and girls to have boyfriends? Well, the point is what age, the point is what constitutes a boyfriend and girlfriend. I mean, these are the issues that we need to look at. If we're talking about little children who are 3 years old, 4 years old, these ages, up to the age of 7, then the children are allowed to be educated from Islamic perspective together up to that age, to the age of 7. Why 7? Because the Prophet, may God's peace and blessing be upon him, had said, teach your children prayer at the age of 7 and spank them for it by the age of 10 and separate them in their beds. By him instructing that salah, prayer, be taught at the age of 7, he didn't just mean that the child learns the movements and they will just imitate the movements that you make. No, it means they learn the prayer and what is necessary for that prayer. They learn how to make wudu. They learn that they must cover themselves properly for prayer. They learn, all the different principles that govern prayer. I mean, that a young person at that age can grasp at the age of 7. And virtually all of the major things can be grasped, so much so that the children, even at this age, can lead the whole community or individuals in the home in prayer. We know one of the companions of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he had narrated that when he had gone with a delegation to the Prophet ﷺ, and they had accepted Islam, and he taught them, and they stayed and learned with him for a while. And after teaching them, he instructed them that they, when they go back to their tribe, that the one who knows the most Quran should lead them in prayer. So when they had finished their instructions and, they went back to the tribe and they looked around to see who knew the most Quran, it was him. And he was only 6 or 7 years old at the time. And he said, from that point onward, I led my tribe in prayer. So, obviously, this is somebody, 6, 7 years old. He not only he needs to know what to do if he makes a mistake. He needs to make, sujud to sahaw. This is the additional prostrations for forgetfulness. He needs to know if he passes wind, he has to leave prayer. The various requirements that they need to know about prayer, they should be taught. And they can be taught at that age. This is why the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had prescribed it. So, at the same time, this is also the age when they're also learning about separation. They should not, as children now, they should be very, very, very much aware of covering their aura properly, not looking at the aura of others, that is the private parts of others, private parts of the body. The little girls should be properly covered. They should not expose any parts of their body which they're not normally going to be allowed to expose when they reach puberty. They should be taught that from this point, so that they develop that sense of consciousness of their bodies in that sense. And connected to it is all the other things. They're fasting. They should be taught to fast at that period of time. They should be encouraged to give charity and all of the various aspects of religion. So what is connected with this is also the separation of the sexes. So at this point, that separation needs to take place. They need to know that boys and girls shouldn't be alone together. Why? Because as the Prophet ﷺ said, the third is Satan. The third is Satan. So in the earlier ages, 3 years old, 4 years old, where children are not aware of these kind of differences, sure, they can have friends back and forth because this is innocent friendships. But once they start to reach 7, there is a change which has taken place in the child, which is psychological and emotional. Changes are now taking place. This is why the Prophet ﷺ designated 7. And in fact, modern educational psychologists, etc., do identify 7 as a major turning point, 10 as another point. So the children should learn that they shouldn't have these relationships from then. So naturally, young people, those who pass this question on to me, these are students already in high school, definitely this is not permissible. It's not permissible not because it is prohibited for a girl to speak to a boy or a boy to speak to a girl, because it is not in Islam. But where it becomes a girlfriend and boyfriend, meaning they have developed a relationship, a girlfriend-boyfriend relationship is, in fact, a love relationship, a relationship of love, where people are holding hands or wanting to hold hands or to kiss or to these other things. These are the things that come along with boyfriend and girlfriend, and these are prohibited in Islam. It's prohibited. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had said, just in terms of holding hands, Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had said that it is better to have an iron spike driven in your head than to touch someone you can marry. Than to touch someone you can marry. This is how severe it is. Because that touch is the beginning. The touch is the beginning which eventually leads to sexual activity. It is a beginning. And so Islam seeks to close that door as soon as it is necessary. Close the door so that the consequences, the other things that will come down once you open that door, these can be prevented. So we can say that from the Islamic perspective, to have boyfriends or girlfriends is forbidden in Islam. Forbidden. The second question is going to discos haram? Again, young people influenced by Western culture, because of course this has nothing to do with Islam. If a child is raised within an Islamic environment, the idea of going to a disco would be completely out of their mind. But now these are young people growing up, watching television, going to movies, reading novels, all of which promote the dance party. The disco is just another version of it, where boys and girls get together, young men, young women get together, and they're dancing to the music. Is this haram? Of course it is haram. The music that is being played is haram. We're going to, this one of their questions also. We'll look at that in more detail when we get to it. But besides the haramness of the music, that the dance that they're doing, the dancing oftentimes involves touching. This is a boyfriend-girlfriend situation again. This is the environment for building that relationship, that boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. And all the movements of modern dance, they're all sexually suggestive. They're vulgar. They're corrupt. So that whole scene is a corrupt and haram scene. Now if somebody says, but I'm not going there, I'm not going to be dancing or anything, I just want to go with my friends and we'll drink some orange juice and whatever. No. Because it is a corrupt environment. To go in that environment is to be corrupted. You may initially only go there just to watch, and before you know it, you end up on the dance floor with everybody else. And that whole environment, as I said, with the music and everything else, is a haram environment. So we would have to say it definitely is haram to go to discos. or to have parties in which boys and girls are coming together. These are over the age of 7 and up, 6, 7 and up. They're coming together and they're dancing with each other, you know, because that's what we're talking about, really. Discos has to do with dancing, boys and girls dancing together. Now, if girls have a party, all-girl party, and the girls do some folk dances, they do some folk dances, some dances which are traditional in the society where the girls dance together, whatever, but the dances are not sexually suggestive, then that's permissible. Similarly, if the males get together, whatever, and they do some traditional dances, but again, there should be dances which are not sexually suggestive. This again is permissible, but it's the mixing of the two which, you know, becomes clearly haram. And furthermore, the type of dancing, which is the sexually suggestive dancing, this is also completely forbidden. So it means even if it's not the disco that you're going to, but you have a party, whatever is the end of the school year party or the end of the midterm party or whatever party that you have, where you're bringing the boys and the girls together, and that environment in itself, which is promoting boyfriend-girlfriend relationships, and furthermore, the dancing in that environment would be haram, forbidden in Islam, sinful. The question, third question, is a friendly relationship between boys and girls haram when they have no bad intentions and they consider each other as brothers and sisters? Again, a friendly relationship with no bad intentions. Well, you know, again, as they say, the path to hell is paved with good intentions. The path to hell is paved with good intentions. We don't judge right and wrong based on intention. So if you have a good intention, this haram thing becomes halal. If you have a bad intention, well then the haram thing is really haram and bad. No. If it is haram, whether you have a good intention or a bad intention, it's still haram. Doesn't change it. So what we're talking about is that relationship itself. The friendly relationship is the first step. The step to boyfriend and girlfriend. Because what starts out as just a friendly relationship, we talk over the telephone, you know, we see each other in school, you know, we sit for lunch together in the lunchroom or whatever, you know, we're just friends. We're only talking about school, talking about our parents, talking about, you know, general things. It's just a matter of time before that discussion shifts to something of a I love you relationship, you know, how much do you love me and all these other kinds of things. It's just a matter of time. So though the initial relationship may be quite innocent and there isn't actual haram going on, that is, of course, as long as they're not alone together, because again, you know, if one says, okay, we're just going to have this friendly relationship, nobody's going to, you know, talk about anything, but we'll go and be in rooms, you know, alone, and we close the door. I will go over, as a young boy, I'm going over to my neighbor's house. My neighbor, the girl, she's in my class. We study together. We're just, you know, and we're going to go into her bedroom and we'll be studying together and close the door. No, this is haram. This is forbidden. One may say, oh, we're just doing our homework. Please. The Prophet ﷺ said, when a young man and a young woman, or a man and a woman, are alone, the third is shaitan. So that environment, that circumstance would not be allowed. It's one thing if, for example, your neighbor is having some problems with their homework and so, so you come over and in the presence of the mother's sitting there, you come and you try to explain something. No, this is how it's done, that is how it's done, whatever. In the presence of the mother or the father, no problem. That keeps it innocent. So it's not to say that a young man may not ever speak to a young woman. You know, given some circumstance like that, in the presence of the father, yes, you could explain how this work is done, how this homework is done. So, but just going and saying, we're going to go study now, and you're off on your own, nobody around to supervise or to keep track of what is going on. No, this is haram. It leads to haram. And as they say, whatever is haram, those things or those steps which are necessary to get to that haram also become haram. Right? To get to this point of haram, you have to go up these stairs. These stairs are also haram. With that, dear viewers, I'd like to thank you for being with us in this segment of our program, in which we have been answering some of the questions from the young boys and girls from Oxford School in Dubai. And we hope that you'll continue to follow our program throughout the year. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.